Okay guys, now, you've seen these videos before, the entire Fortnite lore explained, you've seen them all, right? If you're one of those people, I was one of those people too, I thought I was the guy, hey, I know everything about the Fortnite storyline, I've been following this for a very, very long time, little did I know, there were a lot of pieces to the story that I didn't know. So today what we're doing is we're going to be taking a look at Rivecha's channel, and I am so sorry if I'm pronouncing this channel name wrong. I do not want to be disrespectful in that sense in any way, because this video that we're about to watch together is the best Fortnite lore explained video that I have ever seen. I've watched Top 5 Gaming, I watched PlayStation Grenade, those regular channels that most people watch that look over the Fortnite storyline. Even Postbox Pad is really good at looking at what's going on the Fortnite lore and explaining the Fortnite storyline. This is the best video I've ever seen on the topic. There were things in this that I didn't even know happened. So the channel was awesome. They let me react to this video, and thank you so much, guys. I encourage you. It will be in the pinned comment. It will be in the description down below. Go check it out. If you want to watch the video without me talking over it, go watch it yourself. It is absolutely fantastic. And with that being said, let's get into it.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, suddenly an explosion of matter brought into fruition existence. We know this as the Big Bang. However, the Big Bang didn't just create our universe, it created an infinite number of universes. Different timelines, different worlds, any possibility you can think of came into creation. The responsibility for the creation of the multiverse was the 0 point. The true 0 point is a bridge between universes, between dimensions. Therefore, it exists beyond reality, not in any universe. However, the 0 point has an outer appearance, or a shell, which can be used to access the true in-between.
I wanted to stop it because I was like, okay, we're going to listen to this intro here. But there's so many things, like looking back at these pictures here, there's so many things where it's like, do you remember when we first saw the 0 point in the unvaulting event, and it was like, hey, what is that? Even if you go back and look at people's reactions, it was like, there's a big ball. It's funny to me.
Dimensions. This shell is what we can perceive the 0 point while observing it from the outside. Think of it like a black hole. We can observe it from the outside and determine its properties from those observations, but we don't know about the true nature of these objects. However, the 0 point can still be accessed through the shell. This shell of the 0 point is not located in between dimensions, however. It exists in a real universe. Within that universe, there exists a planet, and on that planet, there was an island, and on that island,
the Fortnite island.
This universe where the 0 point's shell resides is called Reality Zero. Before we get into the storyline, there are several factions and concepts that will need to be explained. Of course, I can explain these things when they are first introduced in the timeline, but it's going to be a lot easier to explain the whole lore seamlessly if I just explain this stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like this is where I need to be quiet for.
So first, we have to explain several concepts relating to the 0 point, which are pretty imperative to the whole lore. The 0 point, while stashed away on the island in Reality Zero, still needs a method of protection. So it trapped the island in a temporal loop of sorts, preventing the majority of people on the island from reaching the 0 point. The loop is a temporal anomaly which can best be explained as resetting people trapped within it every 22 minutes. If anybody entered the loop from outside, they would lose their memories once trapped within. People trapped inside the loop are referred to as loopers. The loop would also manipulate the minds of loopers, making them more aggressive. The loop takes away a person's ability to speak, rendering them mute and mostly unable to.
And do you remember when we're like going back, and I'm sorry, I wanted to be quiet for this intro, but like there's so many things, like I said, where it's like we were listening to the scientist in season X talking about being muted, and we're like, muted? What is this? And it made absolutely no sense. You remember all the videos trying to decipher what they said there? Sorry, I will be quiet and we will talk more throughout the video, but I want to get this introduction out of the way.
Communicate. As such, they would all be too focused on fighting each other instead of finding out the true nature of the island and the 0 point. If a person dies within the loop, they would come back to life once it resets, but they would lose their memories from the previous iteration of the loop, and any changes they made to the island would be erased. However, while memories would be lost, feelings or emotions would be retained in between different loops.
And you knew this through the comics, right?
This is the 0 point's defense mechanism. Take away the memories of people on the island and force them to keep killing each other over and over again. If they're thinking about that, they won't be thinking about how to reach the 0 point. The way the loop would enforce this was through a hazardous storm surrounding the island. It's basically impossible to survive in the storm for an extended period of time, and over the course of 22 minutes it closes in gradually, forcing the loopers to get closer and closer together until it closes in completely at the end of 22 minutes. Despite this precaution, however, there are multiple ways to escape the loop or even just avoid entering it altogether. To escape the loop, you have to be the last person alive during one of the 22-minute iterations.
And for those of you who haven't read the Batman Fortnite comics, you wouldn't know this. This is all was explained in the comics. It's crazy. The amount of thought that Donald Mustard put into this is actually so fantastic to me.
And stand at the eye of the storm once it closes in. If you follow these steps, a looper can escape the loop. Afterwards, they are free to stay on the island without experiencing the effects of the loop. So that means no memory loss, as well as the fact that anything they build or destroy will remain permanent.
So this is where it was a little bit confusing for me in looking at the storyline. I don't understand how they could be on the island without being affected by the loop. Does that mean they're just in does the storm still come? Because people have described it as like another sheet over the island, but it just doesn't make sense to me. That's something I'm sure we'll end up finding answers to, but at the same time, like, it doesn't really make sense. If you escape the loop and you're still on the island, how are people not seeing you and not killing you? You know what I mean?
The storm also doesn't affect people who've escaped the loop.
Oh.
However, this also means that if somebody who escapes the loop dies, they die permanently.
Yes, that's true too.
As of right now, it's unclear how loopers interact with people on the island who've escaped the loop.
Like I said, it's been a little bit since I watched this video. I watched this video maybe a couple months ago, so there were things that I didn't remember. And it was just an hour and 17 minutes long. Guys, buckle in. We're going to be here for a while. It's a very, very interesting video, though.
And I can't really explain that. Hopefully we get more information about that in the future. However, something important to note is that even if you escape the loop, you're still stuck on the island, which is something we'll get into later. There are two ways people who enter the island can avoid being trapped in the loop altogether. The first is through a specially designed self-contained suit.
And this is something we just found out.
The other way is by having a rift device, this little gun-like thingy on you. However, there is one constant across anybody living on the island. If you escape the loop, you leave behind a clone of yourself, known as a snapshot. Even if you aren't trapped in the loop and just visit the island, you'll still leave behind a snapshot of yourself once you leave the island.
And this is something that I find so genius about the way Fortnite does things. The way that they sell all these reskins, like, oh, it's just another snapshot of Jones. It's genius how you tie it into a story. And it's funny because, like, you could think about, like, any kind of story, right? But this is an interesting story. This is a super, super interesting story.
People who visited the island many times would leave behind many snapshots of themselves, as we'll talk about later.
That's why we've seen so many Agent Jones.
These snapshots, if they ever escape the loop themselves, retain their own memories, and often they even gain their own personalities, becoming their own separate person for all intents and purposes. However, since they are ultimately a snapshot, deep down they do inherently retain some of the memories of the original person they are a clone of, although they are held deep within the subconscious. Another thing to note is that it is also possible to create snapshots of objects, although this won't be used until much later. Remember the rift gun I talked about before? Yeah, it has a purpose other than just keeping its owner safe from the loop. It can be used to help open rifts or portals. The 0 Point, as the center of the multiverse, has the ability to travel between different universes. A portal,
it's the start of everything,
rift between universes that is directly derived from the 0 Point is known as a pure portal. These rifts are stable and controllable. The rift guns I've talked about before.
And this is something that we didn't understand until the comics came. And that's why the comics are so interesting to me, because we saw these things a few seasons ago, Chapter 2, Season 6, yes. And it, like, we saw those things, we're like, okay, something coming from the 0 Point, but they're actually pure portals. And it's crazy the way they tie things into here.
Somewhat of a GPS. You can program the device to set coordinates of whatever reality you want to travel to within the 0 Point. The other type of rift are the sideways portals, which resemble cracks in space-time itself. The sideways rifts are unstable, and they will close pretty quickly. However, some of the bigger sideways rifts do end up sticking around for a bit before they destabilize. Both kinds of rifts are good ways for people to get on and off the island, but for a while, the residents of the island would not even know about them. So these are basically all the concepts you need to know. However, there are also some factions you'll need to know about beforehand to understand the story better.
Almost getting into it,
as well as some characters of interest. The first and most important faction is the Imagined Order, also known as IO or just the Order. IO is a military organization who are very powerful because they currently control the 0 Point. In fact, they have been around for thousands of years, secretly controlling the 0 Point from the shadows.
I always wonder if they were in control from the beginning.
While their origin is unknown, their main base of operations, known as the Bridge, is underneath the island. Most of the time, the bridge contains the 0 Point within it. They use the 0
And this is something that I love about imposters too. Remember, I don't know if you guys did the same thing I did. When imposters first got added, all I did was explore the area because I was like, this was in the comics. This is where the IO, this is from a trailer. This is when Agent Jones was hopping in from the trailer in Season 5, and nobody cares about this. People just liked Among Us and wanted to play it. And I was like looking around, admiring. You could see sharks swimming around. You could look up in the water. I loved what they did. I hope we get map changes at some point with the imposters area.
Point for their own selfish goals by meddling and experimenting in different realities, often resulting in the disruption of the balance of multiple universes. As controllers of the Zero Point, they are the only ones with access to pure portals, and as such can freely travel between realities, either recruiting people to work for the IO or straight up kidnapping them and trapping them in a loop. The IO runs experiments on people stuck in the loop, and they're the ones responsible for supplying the loopers with weapons as well as monitoring the storm.
You know what else I find interesting about this is if this were all real, because actually there are talks about a 0 point in real life, but like I'm always of the opinion where it's like we can't possibly know anything about that, you know what I mean? But let's say like we had the opportunity to do this. The Fortnite island was real in this real world, right? It was close to Earth. Us as a society would do this, wouldn't we? We would stick people on there and just study it from underneath, right? It's sad, and it's cool. It's a good. It's such a cool storytelling. I don't know if you ever watched The Maze Runner. It's what it reminds me of a little bit. It's really cool.
They have basically mastered control of the loop. They also have easy access to the surface of the island through these bunkers, which couldn't be opened unless you played a specific frequency to act as a key. Mm-hmm. The people they bring to the island either as...
And it's that little things that I was talking about in this video where it's like, I didn't know that it was a specific frequency that we had to use to unlock it. But of course, like we read that in the Batman comics. But if I'm not mistaken, we just saw it and Batman was like, got it. You know what I mean? So, something like that. It's a little bit fuzzy to me. Regardless, it's something that I didn't remember. And it's something that I thought was cool. Like there's always little touches that no other videos explained before.
As allies or prisoners come from many different realities, including ones that we know from TV shows or movies. Unless they do something significant, I'll most likely just ignore these people. So that's why you might see Rick Sanchez or Master Chief in one of the clips I use, and I'll just seem to not acknowledge it. Moving back to the IO, their goal is to obtain more knowledge of the 0 Point, and with that knowledge comes power.
Yep.
They're clearly willing to do anything, even stuff that you saw was pretty ethically dubious,
like
in
Sloan,
order to increase their power.
Leaving us on the ship.
The list of canonical IO members is going to be way too long to explain them all, but I'll explain some of the bigger names, and if I ever have to explain another member, I'll do so when it's their part to play in the story. The first character in this faction is
my boy,
Agent John Jones. The closest thing Fortnite has to a protagonist besides the unnamed player character, who to be honest is just an observer of everything. On the other hand, Jones is very much an active player. He is one of the most accomplished agents in IO's history, known for his many expeditions across different realities. He is also the first choice when IO needs to investigate something happening on the island. With the amount of time he has gone to the island, Jones has left many snapshots of himself, and as we'll talk about later, Jones does eventually defect from the Order.
So cool.
The next important character is Dr. Sloan. Sloan was recruited into the Order from a young age, and she was a child prodigy, showing proficiency in both academics as well as combat. She's also absolutely ruthless, willing to do anything and work with anyone.
She's the worst, dude.
Goals. She's basically borderline psychotic, viewing her subordinates as pawns and doesn't even bat an eye when they're right in front of her. After capturing Jones, she even tells him that she would enjoy torturing him. Despite some clear issues, since she was so talented, she grew up to be one of the top-ranking members of IO. Even though she
we gotta know that's Geno, right?
Administration as an executive, she is definitely willing and capable to be an efficient leader and fighter on the battlefield.
Hey, dude, she's hard to fight on the field too.
The third important member, because we don't know anything about him, and we don't even know if they're a member of the IO in the first place. But it is theorized that an individual named Geno is the leader of the Imagined Order.
Yeah, it's probably that dude in the picture.
Is said to be under the control of Geno. That's all we know about him. But I still wanted to include them because they're clearly an important person according to Con.
I thought Geno was a place. That's what I was leaning towards because the sisters are at Geno and he's like, you promised me Geno or take me to Geno. No, Agent Jones is like, wait, I can get you to Geno. And I thought Geno was a place and nobody else was really talking about that. And I was like, man, I thought I was so right here. But Geno is obviously now a person because The Rock was like, you promised me Geno. And Jones was like, well, it was going to take it to him. And I thought the sisters were on planet Geno or reality Geno, something like that. I thought that's what was going on, but I was wrong there.
Conversations characters have had about him. The next faction, and one that's arguably just as or even more important than the IO, is the Seven.
The Seven,
as the name suggests, are a group of 7 individuals, but they do have allies. The Seven are what you could call 0 Point conservationists. They hate that the IO are using the 0 point for their own selfish goals, and worry that all
Freedom
their
fighters.
multiversal manipulation will result in a catastrophic destabilization of existence itself. Therefore, they've been fighting a war against the IO for many years in order to free the 0 point from their control.
Was it ever clear how long that's been?
When the storyline picks up, it actually takes place after a lot of the battle has happened. We just jump in the middle of the war. Also,
it'd be cool to see like chapter 3 is kind of like a prequel to everything that's happened, so you could even have the map before the chapter 1 map. Super cool.
7 are masters of using the sideways portals. Since IO is blocking access to the 0 point directly, they use sideways rifts to travel instead. At this point in time, thanks to leaks, we actually know the name and appearances of all the 7 members. However, we only know in-depth information on 4 of them. The first is the Foundation. The Foundation is
Dwayne
the
The
leader
Rock
of the 7
Johnson.
and firmly believes in the goals and ideology of the group, quite literally being the foundation of the group's morale and teamwork. He also suspiciously looks and sounds like Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, and see, now we know, because this video was made a little bit ago, right? Now we know for sure. I believe this was made right before the live event. Am I wrong? I could be wrong.
Remember, he actually isn't Dwayne Johnson. Foundation is a skilled combatant and is willing
Chapter
to do
3.
anything to protect the 0 point, including brutally killing people and even sacrificing himself to save the 0 point once. Next up,
Man's a
we've
Chad.
got the Visitor. We don't really know much about him, especially due to his reserved nature, making him a man of few words. According to his description, he is a navigator and explorer, and he helps the 7
that explains a
plan
lot, right?
expeditions. The third member of the 7 is the Scientist.
Oh, I thought he was
less
going to
is
say
known about
Singularity.
him, although he certainly is talkative with a sense of humor. He's pretty technically oriented and was able to help the Visitor build a rocket as well as construct rift beacons.
Was he there in chapter 1, season 3 or 4 when the Visitor was building the rocket? Was he there? I thought he just came in season 10.
The fourth member is an interesting one, known as the Paradigm. She's
Singularity.
a member who, for some reason, had a falling out with the rest of the 7 and just kind of left afterwards.
So I'm recording this video before we get a potential event. It looks like we're not going to get a live event, but my prediction is that she is the Singularity, and the reason that because obviously what he's going to get into is the Singularity had a falling out with the 7. So the Singularity, aka the Paradigm, it's got to be the same person. It's basically confirmed at this point. I believe that in the live event where she was fighting the mech, she took the 0 point, right, and damaged it and just took off to space, and then that's what the Rock didn't like because they want to protect the 0 point at all costs, right? No matter what, protect the 0 point. But she had to use the 0 point's power to beat Caddis, right? That's probably where the falling out happened. She never returned.
Shunned by the group. Only the Scientist
And she's right, by the way.
intention of forgiving her. It's unknown what exactly she did to lose the trust of the others, but I have a hunch which I will explain later. And now we have the other 3 members, who aren't officially revealed yet, but the community is pretty sure that these are the other members of the 7. The 5th member of the 7 is the Origin, and he looks like this. That's all we know about him so far.
That's got to be a member, right?
The last 2 members of the 7 are actually a pair, and they're just known as the Sisters.
And it looks like we're going to see them in the
Sisters
comics,
are very
right?
Interesting. If these 2 images are actually the Sisters, they are very different visually from the rest of the 7. For one,
And this character design was just revealed in the upcoming comic to us. I believe the one with red hair. And on the poster, the teaser, whatever we got there, right? And it looks like it's not confirmed that that's a sister, but it's more you know what I mean? We're getting to that spot where it's basically confirmed.
and they don't have the iconic helmet associated with the group. And they're a majority red, a color which we didn't see before in any of the members.
That is weird too,
On
actually.
the other hand, they do share some visual similarities to the other members in their armor.
I wonder if it was like
According to
Singularity.
dialogue in the game, these 2 are somewhere under the jurisdiction of IO, as Jones tells the Foundation he can bring him the Sisters.
Yeah, they might just be like Singularity because Singularity was protecting the 0 point and it kind of was like undercover in the IO, if that makes sense. Or maybe what if Singularity is a bad guy? Now I'm thinking about it. You never know, right? Regardless, they're probably working for Dr. Sloan and maybe they don't know that they're part of the 7. Maybe that's just my theory.
However, whether this means that the Sisters are prisoners of IO, or if it means that they betrayed the 7 and joined the IO, we don't know
That too.
yet.
That's true too.
The third important faction in the story is known as the Last Reality. Although we
Oh,
didn't
my
know
girl,
about them
the
until
Cube
very
Queen.
recently, they've had a presence in the story for several years. The Last Reality are a group which is dedicated to traveling across different realities and taking them over by corrupting them with dark matter. They are divided into 2 separate divisions: the alien-like chimeras, who are basically just a slave army, alongside the Cube Legion, which consists of cubes, fiends, and basically anything related to dark matter. Also, the weakness of the Cube Legion seems to be large amounts of water, but this is somewhat contested. The last reality is led by the Cube Queen.
Let's go.
These are all the major characters and factions of the Fortnite lore. The Fortnite storyline is about these different factions and their struggle over the 0 point, as well as the people of the island who are caught in between.
Was it ever clear what the
Now
Cube
that
Queen
you have
wanted?
the basics down, let's start explaining the storyline.
There we go. All right, that's a long intro, but interesting, isn't it? Right from the beginning.
We've already gone over the creation of the multiverse, so let's fast forward several billions of years. As of right now, the island is under the control of the Imagined Order. The island itself is populated, either through loopers the IO kidnapped and sent there, or just from people native to Reality
The OG
Zero
map,
that happen
man.
to live there.
Something else.
While many were stuck in the loop, over time people were able to escape and live normally on the island. However, escaping the loop doesn't mean escaping the island. Even if you sail to the island from the seas surrounding it, you wouldn't be able to leave. It's like a dome which you can enter but you can't escape. Remember, the people living on the island were just normal civilians, with no idea of the 0 point or of rifts,
Right.
so they had no way to escape. However,
They
this
just
didn't
lived there and
stop
killed
some
each
people
other
from trying.
constantly.
One such example was when Renegade Raider and Aeronaut tried to escape by sailing as far away as they could.
And see, it's stuff like this that I didn't even know about. Like, what comic is this? Am I, like, wrong? I've never seen this before. If you go far enough... Oh, it must have been in a comic, right? The Batman one. Oh, okay, this is explaining the chapter 1. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Aeronaut tried to glide past the barrier, but he got torn apart and killed once he
Right.
crossed it. Geez, maybe that's why he hasn't been back in the item shop for a while. Also, just a quick side note, I find it very funny that Aeronaut's item shop description is Journey Beyond the Edge of the Sky, and years later
It's
in the
these
comics,
little
even
touches,
say that he
man.
died doing exactly
It's these
that.
little
Anyways,
touches
unable
that's
to
so
escape,
cool.
The people of the island would just live lives normally, becoming self-sufficient. They developed farms, energy, a functional government, housing, and eventually even entire cities.
And this is what I don't understand, because if everything resets and you can't talk to each other within 22 minutes, how does that work? Anyone but the IO, it makes sense. Anybody that's outside of the loop, how does the government work? And that's what I don't understand. How does that work while everybody's killing each other? I don't understand.
While there was suspicion about the indestructible bunkers leading to the IO base below, there wasn't much they could do to investigate, so life went on as normal. That is, until they spotted something in the sky. A meteorite
That's where it
was
started it
slowly
all.
getting closer and closer, and it looked like it was on a collision course with the island.
And this is where, when we first started playing Fortnite, because everybody was playing Fortnite back then, right? Everybody was talking about Fortnite. Everybody was playing. I was the only one of my friend group who was like looking up in the sky, and I was like, hey, that meteor is getting bigger every day. And I didn't know there was a storyline, right? So I didn't really follow this too much. I was kind of playing the game. That meteor is getting bigger. That meteor is getting bigger. I wonder what's going on. Maybe this meteor is coming. And then you're like, what are you looking at that for? My friends don't like the Fortnite storyline. It's weird. It's weird. Only a couple people, like, if you watch the channel, you would know Nick. It entertains me when we talk about the Fortnite storyline, but I still don't know if he actually enjoys the Fortnite storyline. Regardless, I'm lucky to have some people that enjoy playing the game. You know what I mean?
Even stranger was the fact that the meteor was emitting a message in Morse code. When translated, it read, "They don't want you to..." The last word is most likely no.
Yeah,
so
I didn't know about that.
It looks like whoever's on the meteor wants to warn
There's a lot of
the
stuff I
people
forgot.
of someone suppressing information. Eventually, the meteor crashes down onto the island, turning Dusty Depot into a large crater. And as people suspected, the meteor had an occupant. The government quickly occupied the main crash.
And see, how does this happen? How does this happen with the loop? I'll stop talking about that. It's just like the stuff that I don't understand. You know what I mean?
Studying the capsule. However, the inhabitant within left and broke out of the government facility, leaving a trail of destruction behind him.
It's like the Thor
person
1
inside
movie.
The meteor was the Visitor, a member of the Seven. Of course, being the Navigator, he was the first player in this new planet of the Seven, laying out the base for what was to come. The Visitor made his way to a nearby movie set where a fake rocket was being built. Using the anti-gravity hop rocks from within the meteor, he was able to convert the fake rocket into a functioning one.
Yep.
Alerts were sent out to the residents of the island, warning them of a possible
I remember
attack.
those too.
Eventually, the
The
Visitor
nostalgia,
did
man.
launch the rocket, but instead of attacking anybody, he actually outfitted the rocket with technology to create large sideways rifts. We can hear this during his launch broadcast. He says that he turned something called a 0 point oscillator on right before opening the first rift. After creating several more rifts, the rocket
it was supposed to
flies
go
up
to
and creates a
tilted, right?
giant rift in the sky. Although this sideways rift was still unstable, it was still powerful enough to be more permanent. The reasons for the Visitor launching the rocket are unknown. Some people believe that he was actually on the rocket and this was just a way for him to escape.
Oh yeah,
However,
maybe.
I find this theory unlikely.
Oh.
My personal theory was that this was the first step in a plan to drive IO off the island, or at least to disrupt their experimentation.
Oh, you know what? That would work
The
too.
rift in the sky
I kind of
caused
believe the other one.
realities to start merging. Things on the island started to be rifted away.
Yeah, I gotta disagree with you there. It sounds more like the visitor trying to escape the loop is more believable. Of course, again, we don't know. You could be totally right, but you never know.
Other dimensions, including the Durburger mascot head, which was rifted into our reality. After a private investigation
seeing
was
those.
conducted, the burger was just abandoned on some property out in the California deserts. Sometime later, a street artist who called himself Drift
Song's
snuck
a banger,
onto the
dude.
property with the intent of
Sorry.
vandalizing the burger. Unlucky for him, though, the burger was rifted back to the island on Reality Zero, and it took him along for the ride. Now stuck on the island and quickly succumbing to the effects of the loop, Drift found himself in a place which had been plunged into chaos. People and things from multiple realities were now in combat on the island, most notably an entire village of Vikings. However, as he lost his memory, Drift did find new friends, and once escaping the loop,
And I
he
miss
would
the
spend
loading
some quality
screens.
time with them. But the fun times didn't last forever, as soon IO would send their enforcers onto the island in order to round up anybody who was rifted there because of the visitors' actions. IO wanted complete control of the island, which meant that outside variables, stuff from other realities that they didn't want to be there, would have to be removed.
Yeah, they would
The
just go hunt
enforcers
them
would
down.
hunt down Drift as well as the Vikings. But the problem with trapping people in the loop is that once they escape, they would be skilled fighters trained from fighting all the time.
Yeah,
The enforcers had a tough time trying to remove these individuals.
unless you're a
from the
bush camper.
island, and most were able to actually just escape their grasp. Notice that the enforcers here were using sideways portals to rift onto the island, not pure portals. This implies that IO has been losing control of the 0 points,
Oh, I never thought of
possibly
that.
due to the visitors' actions. This is good for the 7, because the less control IO has
See, it's
over
the little
0
stuff.
point,
It's
the
the little
easier it
stuff.
would be for the 7 to take control of it from them. But little did neither faction know that the third enemy would soon be entering the battlefield.
It was so
While
confusing
all
at
of
the
this was
time.
happening, the rift in the sky the visitor opened was slowly destabilizing and becoming smaller. Before it completely closed, a bolt of lightning shot out and formed a cube of darkness. Looks like the island had a visitor from the last reality. The cube started to roll around the island, leaving runes in specific areas. Afterwards, the cube started rolling towards the 0 point,
One of the most
attracted by its power.
fun times
Once it
ever.
reached the Loot Lake, it tried to go into the water, but it dissolved, turning
Yep.
the lake into essentially a bouncy house of dark matter.
Now, water was its weak point, so maybe it was just it's still weird to me. Was it trying to get the 0 point, but it can't really go in water? Water makes it weak, right? I don't know.
After some time, the cube built up energy and reformed, lifting the small island in the middle of Loot Lake up into the sky. It created a portal to the last reality above itself, and the runes it planted on the ground became corrupted areas. And more importantly, it also opened a hole below down to the 0 point.
It's been so long since I
The
watched
legion
these
of
trailers.
cube fiends started to attack the island and its residents. This was actually the first invasion attempt of the last reality. However, it was not the full force of the last reality, more like an attack by a scouting force. While
Yeah.
this was happening, the cube above Loot Lake tried to corrupt the 0 point by dropping its essence down into the 0 point,
I don't even remember that. Was that going on in game, or did it happen like one time?
but as a consequence, the cube itself was weakened. Eventually, the cube went
Oh, maybe that happened during the live event because I actually missed that live event. I was so sad I was working through it.
all out in its attack on the 0 point, causing the 0 point to suck in everyone on the island. For the first time, we see the true nature of the 0 point, the in-between. It creates
beautiful,
a rift
too.
which transports us back to the island, and we see the pieces of the shattered cube lying on the ground where it once floated above. The cube had lost the battle against the 0 point, and through these series of events, the last reality unknowingly helped the 7.
Yeah.
Because of the attack on the 0 point, the IO employees who inhabited the bridge had to evacuate, and for the first time in years, the 7 had control over the 0 point. If you think this segment about the 7 seems like pure speculation, just wait because I do have evidence for it later.
And see, that's where
So
I love
now
this
we
video.
move away from the multi-dimensional war and finally get some story about the planet the island is on. While the last reality was attempting to invade the island, there was someone watching. This someone was AIM, a robot created by someone to scout the island. AIM watched as the cube tried to take over the 0 point.
And guys, get ready for this one because this is half the stuff that I really didn't know about or really didn't really think about. It was like, okay, it's a little side story, maybe just for the season, but it actually has some lore attached to it.
They watched as the islanders fought back against the cube fiends. After the last reality was defeated, AIM reported back to his master about the powerful energy the island contained. But who was his master? To answer this question, we have to go back thousands of years. The world of Fortnite once contained great elemental kingdoms. Eventually, these kingdoms broke out into war, and the Fire Kingdom would quickly rise to dominance in the battle and defeat most of the other kingdoms. The only kingdom left fighting against the Fire Kingdom was, ironically, the Ice Kingdom.
Yep.
The Ice King knew that the Fire Kingdom would be a difficult force to defeat, and doing so would require great sacrifice. In one last attack, the Ice King led his armies to capture the Fire King. He then imprisoned the Fire King deep within the dungeons of his castle. But this was not enough.
And remember, we kept thinking like, hey, something's under there. Maybe someone's chained up. And then people were like, no, it's Fortnite. Why would they do that? That's not okay.
The Fire King would simply start to melt through his prison. Therefore, the Ice King made the ultimate sacrifice and put himself as well as his entire castle into a deep freeze.
What a Chad.
Putting both himself and the Fire King into a frozen slumber, intending to never wake up. Thousands of years passed, and the events of the Elemental War have mostly been forgotten, lost to legend. In what used to be the Ice Kingdom, there lived a brilliant inventor named Sergeant Winter. He was able to invent the X-Force Stormwind
Santa.
as well as the AIM robots we talked about before. He sent the AIM robots out into the world to explore for better land to occupy, as the current frozen landscape was hard to...
And it's weird taking a look at this because, like, if they're on a big, what do you call it, iceberg, right? I'm sorry, I lost what I was talking about there. If they're on a big iceberg and knowing how the Fortnite, like, the island looks like, not the island, the world, like, it's just a flat surface, like, you could fall off and die at the edge. It's weird thinking that they were out there looking around, right? They could be at the edge and, like, dying.
Thrive in. One of these robots was sent to explore the island, and after witnessing the power of the 0 Point, Sergeant Winter wanted it for himself. He built giant engines to move the land itself and sail it across the ocean to the island. He eventually reached the island alongside his massive chunk of land he brought.
One of the best trailers ever, too.
Everybody on it inside the loop. However, since Sergeant Winter was a genius and physically strong, it did not take long for him to escape.
And the goat blade.
He started a full-blown invasion of the island, using his planes and soldiers to create military bases across the island. Despite this, the islanders were able to fight back against the invasion. However, Sergeant Winter had unknowingly made a grave mistake. The land he brought to the island included the ruins of the Ice King's castle. Since this chunk of land was now in a temperate climate rather than a polar one, the ice began to melt. And within his icy dungeon, the Fire King awoke and began to melt the ice faster using his powers.
I wish we saw a little bit more of this story.
As melted, the Ice King also woke. He knew something was seriously wrong, because if he woke up, that means his measures to keep the Fire King contained had failed. He quickly searched for a way to reverse the melting. Finding a shard of the cube at Loot Lake, he brought it back to his castle and used it to help increase his power. After several days of building up power using the shard...
Did anyone else always fly planes into that? And just, like, bounce off and take damage or something?
He then covered the island in a deep freeze like he did to his own kingdom thousands of years ago.
And Merry Christmas, Fortnite people. I missed this event too. I was sad. Now we get a nice big heads up when they're coming. I could, like, switch a shift around or something, hopefully. A lot of people hate on this event, but I really enjoyed it. I really did. Like, and I wasn't even playing it. Maybe I was just happy to see snow and fog because I like that stuff.
However, this action was taken too late. The Fire King had escaped, and he was on a quest to increase his power as well.
Yep.
He used the thermal energy found deep within the earth, and as a result caused devastating earthquakes. Finally, after some time building up his power at Weeping Woods, he reached his full capacity and built a new home for himself by literally raising a volcano.
Created one of the best maps we've ever seen in Fortnite history.
To take on a tropical climate. He also took some eggs, which were also in the Ice King's dungeon, and these eggs hatched into hybrids, a species...
Remember we thought those eggs were going to be dragons that we could ride around on the Fortnite map? Dragons would still be cool. We still haven't seen, like, a medieval type season. I think it'd be really cool.
...species of lizard-human hybrids. He raised these hybrids to serve him as his minions. With all this, the preparations were set for him to take revenge upon the Ice King. While this was happening, the people of the island realized that there was something very important under Loot Lake, since many groups were trying to get under it. They organized an excavation team to dig out the area, and they found...
And at this point we still didn't know because we're in Season 8, right?
This was surprising to everyone, and naturally, efforts were made to open it. All the keys necessary to open the vault were found, and after they were activated, the vault opened.
What a good event.
People dropped in, and they were once again met with the 0 Point. The vault, which
And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. Remember when we first saw this? All the reactions, everyone was like, "It's a ball. It's a weird ball." Also, was anyone else hitting planes? Because that would have been fun to get unvaulted, or the Infinity Blade. Man, I was one of those guys. I did not want the drum gun.
the 0 point was held in was quite strange. It contained items which had previously seemingly disappeared from reality. They also saw a desk in front of the 0 point with a helmet on it, but the wearer was currently gone. This helmet belonged to Singularity.
Yep, there was a
Singularity
lot of
was
speculation
actually a member
behind
of
that.
Seven, taking on the codename the Paradigm when working with them, but she is just referred to as Singularity otherwise. She was put in charge of watching over the 0 points by the Seven after they gained control of it. The reason why I think the Seven are currently in control of the 0 point is because of its appearance. Compared to how IO contained it in a military facility, the 0 point currently looks much more free and in a natural environment. This
I
more
never thought
free
of that.
environment lines up with the Seven's ideology when it comes to the 0 point.
Another thing is I didn't get those pictures when I was first watching it, because actually, believe it or not, the way I found this video was because it was my YouTube autoplay. It was weird. My recommended for YouTube's super weird because I listen to a lot of different stuff. Like, I was listening to an MMA video, and then I was busy at work and I had my headphones in, so I just let autoplay go, and then I just like got completely captured in this video. So I didn't get the picture. You know what I mean? I was just listening to the guy's voice.
Anyways, after stealing the drum gun from the vault, the islanders are brought back to the surface of the island, and they are met with a horrifying sight.
Tilted
While
finally
the
going.
islanders were busy exploring the vault, the Fire King enacted his plan for revenge against the Ice King. He caused his volcano to erupt, launching several rocks towards
What a
the Ice
good
King's
event.
castle. Several miss and hit residential areas, like Retail Row and Tilted Towers, completely destroying them. However, one does hit close to the target, striking the iceberg right below the castle. While this may seem like a miss, we will soon learn that the Fire King was right on target. Satisfied with what he had done, the Fire King's need for revenge was fulfilled. However, his actions has caused devastation to the residents of the island. Feeling pity towards
That was a
them,
fun time.
Singularity,
Lava
or
Untilted.
Paradigm, I'll be referring to her using both interchangeably from now on, decided to help them rebuild. She broke the Seven's ideology and allowed the people to use the 0 point's energy to power the island.
Oh,
This
I never
new,
thought of that.
unlimited
That could
source
be a
of
reason why
energy
they hate
allowed
her.
the island to make rapid technological advances. Tilted and Retail
It could be that, along with the combination of she literally uses to fight the monster, but then they could have fell out beforehand. I never really thought of that. They could have fell out like at this point, because my point is they fell out a little bit ahead.
were rebuilt into cities of the future. Fast and free public transportation was installed. After such a catastrophe, life finally seemed to be getting better for the islanders. To honor the Paradigm
good
and
life.
thank her for her help in rebuilding the island, the people constructed a massive statue of her. in the
Man, that's
central
something
square of
nobody saw
Neo
coming.
Tilted.
We thought it was literally
However,
just a
little did
statue.
they know that soon they would be needing her help more than ever. The Fire King's attack on the Ice King's castle seemed to miss, but the part of the glacier that it hit started to break apart. Entrapped within the ice, a giant eye started to move.
I will say this now, because I don't know if I'm going to have another opportunity to touch on it. My theory behind this was because Greasy was frozen, right? Everybody wanted Greasy back. Everybody loved Greasy Grove. After that meteor hit, because we didn't see this eye right away, right? It didn't show up. We just like, oh, okay. A meteor hit. It missed. You know what I mean? It missed Polar Peak. What I thought was going to happen was that meteor was going to, at some point, it was going to kind of like collapse. Everything from Polar Peak was going to fall into Greasy, because if you remember on the map, that would have worked so well. And then Greasy Grove would have been unmelted and have the destroyed parts of Polar Peak inside of Greasy Grove. I thought that would have been amazing for a POI. But again, like, or even you could do it when this thing breaks out. Didn't have to stay.
The Fire King was not the only being the Ice King captured. This monster would be a much bigger threat. The monster,
I remember looking
known
at that
as the
too.
Devourer, left the glacier and escaped to the ocean. However, it was spotted circling the island's waters, so it was only a matter of time before it came back to attack. The island scrambled.
Remember that too. That's something I forgot about. Like the stuff when we see sometimes, because if I'm not mistaken, it dipped like a dolphin. It could, like, you saw Polar Peak every once in a while. I don't believe I ever saw it in game, but we saw like little clips on Twitter and stuff.
Countermeasure, and what better way to defend against a giant monster than a giant mech? With all the island's resources used for the defense effort, the mech was quickly built, and Singularity would be the one to pilot it.
There she is,
The
my
day
girl.
the island had been dreading arrived, and a Devourer arose from the ocean, firing a beam of energy. It made its way
Such
to
a
the
cool
zero
event.
point and started battering the vault, hoping to break it open. Singularity
yeah.
pilots the mech out of its hangar.
See, what was she supposed to do, right? He was going to get the 0 point. He was going to win the fight. What was she supposed to do? She did what was right.
And fires a barrage of
Protecting the
missiles
0
at
point.
Devourer, getting its attention. The Devourer fires a beam back at the mech, knocking it down. Singularity gets up and charges the Devourer, knocking them both into the ocean. Singularity emerges, seemingly victorious, but the Devourer leaps out of the ocean and attacks the mech, ripping out its arm and throwing it into the ocean. Singularity is able to throw the Devourer off of her,
And there's
but
the
her
arm
mech was
today.
seriously damaged. As her last resort, she goes to the vault, breaks it open with a punch, and brings out the 0 point. After absorbing some of its power, Singularity throws a mean right hook at the Devourer, stunning it.
That's a terrible
She
right
then
hook.
walks over to Neo Tilted, grabbing the statue of herself,
Just stronger.
pulling it out and revealing
Terrible
that the
technique,
statue
I
was
should have
just
said.
the hilt of a giant sword. The Devourer and the mech lunged at each other one last time, and Singularity drove her sword into the Devourer's skull.
Oh man, the music, guys, the music. It's Epic is so good at this. Their music team needs a raise. It's epic. That's the way
Even
to
though she had
describe
come out
it.
victorious, Singularity knew she had completely messed up.
Mm-hmm.
She had forsaken her duties as a member of the Seven and had damaged the 0 point.
But again, what'd you want her to do? What do you expect her to do? There was no other way to win that fight. She was losing. She was gonna lose. She had no arm. I think she did the right thing, as far as I'm concerned.
To the brink of collapse. She knew the Seven would be extremely upset at her for being responsible for exposing and losing control of the 0 point, but she did go to them for help in controlling the situation. Meanwhile, on the island, the 0 point continued to destabilize. Realities began to merge and make their way onto the island. For example, the crater at Dusty Divot was sent back in time to right before the meteor crashed into it, bringing back Dusty Depot, but
One of the
also
best
leaving
seasons.
the meteor in suspension above it. The floating island created by the cube also returned, but this cube came from a reality where it lifted up the motel instead of Loot Lake. With the multiverse destabilizing, the Seven decided to step in once more and clean up after the Paradigm's failure. The people sent were the Scientist, Visitor, and Paradigm. They created rift beacons as a sort of controlled demolition. Rather than having realities spill over uncontrollably, these rift beacons acted like a dam, allowing reality to destabilize slower and in limited areas.
And I'm going to stop it there for a second. I apologize. I don't know how much I'm supposed to be talking over this. I don't typically do reaction videos here, but there's so much where it's like, hey, this is good information that, I didn't even know beforehand. Do I interrupt and just talk a little bit over it? I don't know what to do, so I apologize. I hope you guys are enjoying watching this with me, because I'm enjoying watching it again. I haven't had these visuals before. Remember those rift beacons? They were so much fun. Bringing old POIs back. Tilted Town, one of the best POIs in Fortnite history.
Replacing only those locations with alternate dimensions. Through the time they gained through this method, the Scientist, Visitor, and Paradigm realized that the only way to fix the exposed 0 point would be a hard reset. They had come up with a plan to perform this reset, but there was one problem. In order to do it, they had to be inside the loop. To prepare entering the loop, they left behind audio tapes for themselves.
And see, again, this is where I'm confused, because if you escape the loop, you're still on the island. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't wrap my head around it.
Which gave background and instructions to their future selves for executing the plan. Here is what they said.
These are so cool.
What the 7 of us are attempting is very risky. I suspect they are not the only ones watching, but it must be done or we lose the bridge forever. I speculate that no one calculated the formation of the island.
And there were so many things, like the bridge, for example. There were so many things where what is this? And there were so many different theory videos and speculation videos. It was such a fun time to be a Fortnite fan. Now it's even better, in my opinion. I love the way Fortnite has progressed, but at the time we knew so little and there was so much to speculate upon. It was a lot of fun. And looking back on these tapes is just something. It's weird,
That interdimensional matter collisions would resolve rather than push. Now that I witnessed it firsthand, it's obvious that pinching alone made it inevitable. When I hear this again, will it help me remember? Or once looped, will I be just as muted as the others? No matter, it seems the lengthy precautions worked. The theorem was a success.
Did we ever figure out what that was?
You arrived outside the loop at the exact moment of expansion. This effectively paused the singularity, giving us time to create the devices needed to synchronize the junction. What I didn't factor was that the only way to trigger the device was from within the loop itself. Thus this hasty and primitive recording. And why now I find myself looped. Activate the beacon at precisely the moment this timer reaches nothing. The 0 point must be contained once more. If they are correct,
Will be the end.
As we saw,
Oh.
this was a last resort plan to keep the bridge and the 0 point under their control. It involved resetting the 0 point from...
I know this is like explaining the Fortnite storyline, but listen to the music as well. It gives me chills, and this is why I will forever probably think this is the best live event in Fortnite history. We're saying bye to everything on the map, but that's not what this is about. It's not what this is about. Pay attention to the music just a tad.
from inside the loop and creating a new island, with the 0 point being reborn and healed in its new home. Eventually, the plan was executed, and the 7 launched a rocket from Dusty Depot, immediately creating a rift in the sky. 6 other snapshots of the rocket were created, and they all coordinated to break the meteor, which was suspended above Dusty Depot out of its stasis. The meteor fell into a rift. One of the rockets rifted above the 0 point, targeted it, and flew down into it, weakening it further.
Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. I get sad watching this one. And I like Chapter 2 more than I like Chapter 1 too, so I don't know why I still get sad about this.
The meteor also rifted above the 0 point, and guided by the 6 other rockets, it fell down into the 0 point, crashing into it.
Right here, man. Right here. Chills. And that was the best version of Loot Lake 2 getting destroyed here.
The 0 point fought back, but in its weakened state, its defenses couldn't hold, and it collapsed into a black hole, sucking the entirety of the island in.
So how did it get back? That's what I'm a little bit confused about. I thought they like just destroyed it. Because that's everything, right? The 0 point. Where's the battle bus? That's my favorite part. Where's... Huh? This one didn't have it. Oh my god. I remember that. That was something. And even in the opening music for the next trailer for Chapter 2. Oh, so nostalgic.
But as quickly as the island disappeared, it was reborn. A whole new land.
So how does
created
that
by
work?
Rearranging the matter of the old island, and the 0 point was once again contained in the bridge. However, it had once again fallen into the hands of the IO after the Reformation, meaning that while they had saved the 0 point, the 7 had also lost it.
Yes.
Due to the catastrophic series of events caused by the Paradigm, she left the 7. Whether she was forced to by the other members, or whether she decided to leave herself because she was ashamed, it is unknown.
Everyone would be gone without her. Who knows what would have happened. I'm on Team Singularity, man.
Meanwhile,
And her
on the
cheeks.
island, the people living on it were extremely confused as to what happened, but grateful to be alive. A group of islanders formed a reconnaissance group called Ego to explore the new island, and even though they crashed their plane initially, this recon team was successful, establishing bases across the new island. However, the Ego squad found something horrifying. An underground criminal organization named Alter had been born in the seedy underbelly of the island, and its members were none other than the snapshots of the Ego team. The leader of this team was the Chaos Agent, the owner...
I feel like there's still more to come about the Chaos Agent. I feel like we're not done with this. Something with about the Slurp characters. I don't know. Nothing really came from the Chaos Agent though, right? We don't, as far as I know. Maybe we'll get into it.
of the company Kevolution Energy, which owned a power plant run by the essence of the Darkness Cubes. He had purposefully hired snapshots to work for him in order to sow confusion in the upcoming battles, and he was told to do this by none other than his secret boss, Midas.
There he
Midas
is.
was a wealthy billionaire with some previous ties to IO, as seen in this image depicting him watching Dr. Sloan.
It's weird. It's weird. Where did this come from? Was it a painting somewhere? Am I wrong? But yeah, it's so weird that he's watching Dr. Sloan here, and there were so many theory videos on this too. We still don't know what's going on. It's a little confused. Like, it seems like Dr. Sloan doesn't have too much behind her besides just like a little kid born to be a leader someday, you know what I mean? But it's so cool to see Midas there, and perhaps maybe we'll get to know these other people in the picture as well too at some point.
It is unknown if the Midas in the story is the same person as the Midas in this image, or if the story Midas is just a snapshot of the original Midas. Anyways, Midas had the ability of the Golden Touch, just like his
I remember
namesake.
those.
However, he could control this ability unlike the mythical Midas. The origins of this power is unknown, but it likely has something to do with the Skeleton King Oro. Using his Golden Touch power as well as some smart business tactics, Midas grew very wealthy and influential on the island, controlling it from his massive office known as the Agency.
What a
found in
good
the center of
season.
the island. He knew that the island was under the influence of the loop and wanted to use the resources at his disposal to destroy the loop and free the island. But he knew that Io was watching, and that they wouldn't tolerate any attempt to disrupt their cruel experiments. He needed a major distraction to keep Io's eyes away from his plan to escape the loop. Seeing the Ego group grow in influence, he asked his subordinate Chaos Agent to create a group named Alter which would impose the Ego group. Midas's distraction would be an all-out war on.
And I was a little bit worried for this because I wasn't really, like, as someone who really enjoyed the storyline in Chapter 1, like, I was really into it. And Chapter 2 started off, it wasn't too great the beginning of Chapter 2, right? I was getting a little bit worried that the storyline would fall apart, too, because I was all like, Alter versus Ego, we're not really getting much here, but I was naive to think that they wouldn't pull it off epic, and it turned into something so fantastic. I was just worried, but when Ghost and Shadow came around, it was so cool.
On the island. Midas was notable for having a large team of spies at his disposal, and he used them to watch the development of the conflict. Whenever Ego and Alter fought, Midas' spies were watching.
Yep.
However, the current conflict was too small to serve as a distraction, and Midas wanted it to escalate. He sent his spies to infiltrate both organizations, and he instructed them to encourage their respective organizations to be more aggressive in the fight. Midas himself joined Ego. What started as isolated battles soon turned into a massive war engulfing the island. The distraction was set. Midas believed the key to breaking the loop could be found in the storm which engulfed the island every 22 minutes. He was right.
What a genius.
The storm was the main driving factor of the loop. He then theorized that if he created a machine to somehow break the storm, then the loop would be broken as a result. However, to create such a machine, he would need a master engineer. Lucky for him, he didn't need to look any further than his own daughter. Jules was the daughter of Midas, a skilled engineer who didn't want to flaunt her father's wealth, and rather decided to make a living independent of him. So she practiced and became a skilled engineer.
And this is where I was a little bit confused because how could they do all this stuff while stuck inside of the loop? That's where it gets me. I keep saying the same thing and I'm so sorry, but it's just like there's so many little pieces. Like, how did she do that though? How did she get that done? How can she work as an engineer?
Working for Alter during the war, Midas reached out to her and asked for her help in creating the storm-breaking device. Jules agreed, but only if Midas gave something in return. Despite her efforts to distance herself from her father, it looks like ambition runs in the family, since Jules asked that influence over the island be given to her. While this meant that Midas would effectively give up all of his power,
or did he?
Agreed because he wanted that device more than anything. Jules began working on the device, and Midas told his agents in Alter to promote Jules to a leadership position.
Yeah.
He also manipulated the war so that Alter would be set to win, which would make Jules a powerful leader on the island after the war. As promised, Jules finished the device. She also built a suit for her father, a self-contained suit similar to the Seven, so even though he wasn't looped,
it's a good
he would be
loading
protected
screen
from any tricks the Storm had up his sleeve. The device would only work in a storm cycle where the eye was centered on the agency.
And nobody talks about this event here. This is one of the best events, honestly. And the music, again, Epic's music team. This is so good. And it's weird looking at this paused, actually. And this is a complete accident. I didn't even mean to like pause it here. I just wanted to pause it to talk. I was like, this event doesn't get enough credit.
So he did have to wait quite a bit. Eventually, the day Midas was anticipating arrived, and he activated his device. The initial activation was enough to blow up his entire agency, but Midas didn't care. This was the day he finally got to escape the island.
Yep.
The device rose up out of the ground, as well as multiple pillars in the water surrounding the agency. It powered up, and using each of those pillars as a power boost, the device sent out beams of energy into the storm, and for the first
Pushing it
time
away.
ever,
Can the storm
was
be
pushed
broken?
back. And Midas was right. This seemed to break the loop, because the loopers were sent to the bridge, with some even finding themselves inside John Jones's office. We see here that I.O. was still suspicious of Midas, because on John Jones's desk were case files on Midas, Jules, and some of Midas's agents.
And it's weird looking back at that because now we know what's outside of that from imposters. Because remember, people were diving into the replay files and being like, what's behind that? What's behind that? And it was never really anything.
Our stay in his office wasn't permanent, and the loopers were sent back to the island. The device flickered off, losing its power. The storm tried extra hard to fight back against the device, raging more than we had ever seen it before. But the device powered up and pushed through once more, and was able to drive the storm all the way back, dissipating it. And for a moment, the island was peaceful. But the loopers are once again transported to the bridge, where we see IO employees in a panic state, quickly trying to think of a solution to Midas's device. However, since the device's power still wasn't enough, we were transported back to the agency, where we were met with a giant circular wall of water enclosing us.
One of the
IO
most fun times ever.
Solution to the storm disappearing, and decided to fill where the storm should be with water. The IO had succeeded in stopping Midas's plan, but for one time, the loopers were transported to the bridge. We hear John Jones talking on the phone, relieved that their plan worked. He opens the door and sees a looper inside of his office.
And remember, everyone, I don't know about you guys, but when we were watching the event, we were like, it's the default. It's the default guy. What? And it was a lot of fun. It was a good time. That was a good event. And now we knew Agent Jones, part of the Fortnite storyline. Well, did we know him as Agent Jones back then? I don't think so.
Completely stunned, he asks us how we got there, and before we get sent back, he asks one more question.
Wait. Can you
hear me? Hear me? So good. That was such a cool event. And then it led to one of the most fun times ever playing in Fortnite with the water storm. It's a tragedy that we only had a couple days with it.
The IO knew the wall of water was just a temporary solution. Once the storm was functioning again, the wall of water collapsed.
That's a good storyline.
Island. In this new hierarchy, Midas was no longer king, and he had made many enemies. He went into hiding near the edge of the island, floating adrift on a raft. He was then attacked by a shark. Whether he lived or died, nobody knew.
Well, I was about to say Donald must have confirmed that he lived.
Meanwhile, the island had recovered from the actions of Midas. Jules took over the ruins of the agency and turned it into her own base, the Authority. Alter ruled the island, but Ego spearheaded a resistance from an ocean base called the Fortilla. However, without the manipulation of Midas, the war quickly died down, and the two sides made peace. Eventually, the water receded and life went back to normal. Well, life can never be normal for too long in Reality Zero. A rift appeared and dropped an object, creating a crater in the ground. This object was
son of Odin.
Thor's hammer? Let's go back in time a bit. When the Seven launched a rocket to reset the 0 point, the energy of that reset was felt across different universes. One being who felt this energy was Galactus from one of the Marvel timelines. Wanting that power for himself, he started to travel to the island, somehow traveling to Reality Zero.
And see, that's where I find the way that Epic does things like this, it's just so fascinating because they tie in, they have an ad here, but they go, okay, well, it's just people flying through the rifts in the multiverse. The multiverse is such a good way to explain what's going on.
However, since Thor, who was acting as a herald of Galactus, was faster, he was able to reach the island through a rift before Galactus, before he was able to pass through.
And something that you didn't mention here, which is obviously you didn't mention it because it's just a theory. Then my personal theory, as you guys know, is they were fighting Black Winter and they pushed them back. Black Winter is on its way to the Fortnite Island. That's where we're going to have another Marvel season. Now we have the comic. The comic got announced. I'm so right about Black Winter.
He wanted to warn the people of the island of Galactus' arrival, as well as prepare a defense to stop him. Before the memory loss of the loop took over, he used the Bifrost to bring many superheroes to the island, most notably Tony Stark.
Let's go, Tony.
While all of them were initially trapped within the loop, having the abilities and powers that they had no problem escaping. They all got to work figuring out a plan to stop Galactus from devouring the 0 points. This plan relied heavily on Stark.
And remember going to Stark Industries and taking a look at these boards and trying to decipher it, but nobody could really understand anything. We got, okay, Iron Man helmet, battle bus, map, something like a rift beacon, but what's the rest? Right? And people were like it was a fun time. That was a good season too with storyline.
Spent his time studying the 0 point, the loop, and snapshots. He found a way to use snapshots in order to create millions of copies of the battle bus within the 0 points. These buses were outfitted with gamma bombs, and Stark believed that if Galactus ate enough of them, once detonated, it would create enough energy to send him back to the universe where he came from, alongside all the other Marvel characters.
He can figure out anything.
Galactus came to the island.
Maybe they will bring back Tony, because now that Tony in Endgame can time travel, hey, he can time travel. I don't know much about the comics. Maybe he probably time travel in the comics too, and we can time travel back to Chapter 1. I would not like that, but maybe that's how we could get a prequel season like we were talking about.
And he was absolutely monstrous, towering over everything else in sight. He brought out the 0 points from within the island and began consuming it, leading it to suck everyone on the island, like in the event back when the cube tried to destroy the 0 point.
That was a fun
Once
time.
again, we were within the 0 point, witnessing its true form. Galactus started to feast on the 0 point, but the millions of battle buses made their way into Galactus's mouth.
Okay, so I took the liberty of tinkering with your reality.
If they start playing the copyrighted music, guys, I'm sorry, I might have to skip just a tad because I remember Galactus music was copyrighted.
Made a few billion battle bus clones, and then turned them all into very powerful
Bombs.
We need to get Galactus to eat as many buses as possible before he's done with the 0 point.
That was fun. That was a fun
If
event.
everything goes right, it'll open a portal and send him back where he came from.
The bombs were all
Okay, we're good.
detonated, creating a rift back to his original timeline, which he was then forced into. Successful, the Marvel heroes returned to their home.
But Black
and
Winter's on his way.
Reality Zero. But since the 0 point was once again exposed and damaged, another destabilization of reality was underway. With the IO and damage control mode, John Jones gets a call from Dr. Sloan. She's worried about more people escaping the loop, and tells Jones to keep people within the loop no matter what. In return, the IO would attempt to mitigate the destabilization of the 0 point. After some argument, Jones agrees. He locates the best hunters across all realities and opens pure portals to these realities with these hunters. He then spends most of his time on a mission to recruit these hunters.
See, and this is where I have trouble like talking into it, right? Because I don't know how much I'm supposed to pause, but at the same time, there's so much information to take in. I just don't want to talk over it. I'm so sorry, guys. I hope you're enjoying watching this, like reacting to it. If you don't want to hear me, of course, you can always go to the channel. So, because I personally, I wouldn't really be watching a reaction video myself because this video is so good.
And bring them to Reality Zero
Sorry.
to prevent loopers from escaping. Meanwhile, Io sent enforcers up to the surface of the island in order to keep the islanders under control.
Those guys.
After bringing all of these different hunters to the island, Jones was upset after finding out that Io had done nothing to repair the damages done to the 0 point.
Understandably
Even
so.
Worse, his mission to get all the hunters from different realities damaged the 0 point even more.
Yeah, because he used it a lot.
Reality log doesn't even matter. What's the point of recording these logs if you're not going to listen? We've lost control of the 0 point. Do you get what that means? You must not, because you're doing nothing. I've dedicated my life to the Order. I've given everything.
That was
for
hype.
what? To just sit back and watch reality end? That's not who we are. At least it's not who I am. Not anymore.
I love him. He's
And
such.
with Io being unwilling to do anything, Jones would seek the help of those he knew would help him fix the 0 point,
Yeah.
the 7.
This is Agent Jones requesting access to restricted file 8752. This is Agent Jones requesting access to restricted file 8752. Oh, really? No time to stabilize reality, but plenty of time to revoke my credentials.
Yeah, why didn't they do anything?
This is Agent Jones requesting access to all materials related to the 7. Oh, great! Okay, if you're not gonna give me what I need, I'm just gonna have to take it.
With the 0 points on the verge of collapse, Jones makes a decision to defect from the imagined order and go to the 7 for help. He sets his rift gun to the last known location of the 7 and throws it into the 0 point, opening a portal. And the person to come out was none other than the leader of the 7, the Foundation. Seeing Jones, the Foundation immediately attacks him, still thinking that he was working for IO.
It was so
Jones
cool to
gets
see him
to
walk
stop by
out.
saying that he could get him to Geno. The Foundation also asks if he could get him to the Sisters, and Jones agrees, as long as the Foundation helps him fix the 0 point.
I can get you to
See, and that's how I thought it was a
and
place.
the sisters. I can get you all of them,
Yep.
but I need your help to fix.
That's what I thought. I thought the sisters were on Geno. You know what I mean? I was so sure.
for now. Oh, that's very reassuring.
The Foundation says yes, and he tasks Jones, as well as an Islander, to close the various portals which have opened around the island while he investigates the 0 point. The Foundation warns that the 0 point would create reality waves, which would change the island drastically every time that happens. Jones becomes a rift butterfly, and we keep transforming into different people. We are tasked with closing the different portals across the island with Jones's rift gun as
And there's the
reality
music
waves keep
again.
rocking us. We finish closing all the portals, but it still isn't enough. The 0 point begins to bloom, and the damage is too much as it starts to fall apart.
And I don't think we still found out what exactly the blooming is because we looked up time bloom and different stuff like that. We really tried to dive into it, but I don't think it was ever explained. I could be wrong. I don't think it was ever explained what exactly that was.
turning red. The Foundation realizes the only way to save the 0 point would be to seal it with him inside. Jones takes us to the Foundation, where a massive spire was being formed around the 0 point. The purpose of the spire would be to contain the 0 point as it healed, and eventually transfer it back underground where it should be. However, in order to complete the process, Jones needed to overload his rift gun and throw it into the 0 point. Without his rift gun, Jones would be trapped within the loop.
I just thought it was funny the way he
The
fell.
Foundation tells him that both of them would have to fight their way back, and that he would find Jones and make him fulfill his promise to give him Geno and the sisters. Jones promises that he would, and he overloads his gun and throws it into the 0 point, completing the sealing process, trapping the Foundation inside the spire and Jones within the loop. Thanks to the actions of both Jones and the Foundation, the 0 point has been saved, and now the story splits into multiple threads. The creation of the spire caused the island to go primal. The 0 point healing allowed life to flourish across the island, and wildlife thrived like never before.
Underrated
Cult
season, by the
dedicated
way.
to the spire rose to prominence, and it looked like they were allied with the IO, trying to prevent any islanders from getting too close to the spire. They were led by the Spire Assassin, who lived at the spire and would attack anybody who got too close to it. No exceptions. However, there was one person willing to defy them. This man was named Raz. Raz was someone who was drawn by the power of the spire and wanted to uncover the mystery behind
Also,
it.
a little bit of an
He hired
underrated
islanders to
storyline.
investigate the crystals found embedded in the spire, and found that they were emanating a humming which could possibly be translated. Raz got to work on creating a device which could translate the crystal frequencies from the spire. He completes work on his device, and once activating it, he learns that the sound played in the crystals is a repeating message from the Foundation, his voice saying, "Jones knows." Even though the actual John Jones was missing, Raz decides to track down all the snapshots of Jones on the island to see if they have any knowledge that could be useful. Now, moving on to the second plot thread found in the comics. Sometime after the Spire was created, a rift was created in Gotham City. The rift leading to Reality Zero sucked in some notable characters.
Guys, if you haven't looked at these comics, you're missing out. You really are. Something fantastic.
Including the Caped Crusader himself. Batman finds himself on the island, stuck within the loop. He quickly discovers that he lost his memory and that he couldn't speak. He also finds out that feelings do transfer over between loop iterations, finding Catwoman and allying himself with her, even though neither of them understood how they knew each other. After several iterations of the loop, Batman would leave himself notes and hints etched into his armor, which would help him further investigate the loop and find allies. Eventually, he figures out that the way to escape the loop would be through standing at the center of the storm while being the last person alive.
How could you possibly figure that out? But he's a genius, right?
And eventually Batman himself is able to escape as well. He is met with a group of islanders who are also on a mission to escape the island itself. This group consisted of Raider, Bonehead, Fishstick, Bandolette, Magnus, and Voyager.
This is where I'm lost. This is, again, where I'm lost. How are they existing? When people, come and kill them, how are they existing?
As well as Catwoman, Deathstroke, and Batman himself. Together, they came up with a plan to escape the island. After seeing the 0 point open pure portals previously, the islanders believed that getting to the 0 point was the key to getting off the island. However, since the Spire Assassin would attack anybody who got close, they believed trying to access it that way would be fruitless. Instead, they turned their eyes to the various bunkers on the island, knowing that there had to be something underneath. Although the islanders said that the bunker was impenetrable, Batman claimed that they were unlocked through a certain frequency. He crafts devices capable of recording and replaying frequencies. He tasks all the members of his group to go around the island with these devices and record every frequency they find.
Jeez.
Batman thought if they collect as many frequencies as possible, one of them has to unlock the bunkers.
Good point.
His hunch was correct, and they do end up unlocking the bunker. Fishstick was sent to scout for any traps while the rest ventured down into the bunker. After fighting against golems, they find themselves in an IO storage room which seems to have collapsed in. After digging through some rubble...
And we saw that in the live event. I didn't even realize that happened. We saw this place in the live event, running through it.
They found Fishstick, gravely burned and injured.
Rip.
Before dying, he gives Batman an IO gadget that he found, which is part of the rift gun used to protect someone from the loop. They go further into the bridge facility, fighting against IO agents sent to stop them. But they were able to fight through the waves of soldiers sent against them and made their way to the 0 point room. The 0 point, once again underground, was right in front of them. Home was right in front of them. Voyager, getting excited, rushed the 0 point and jumped in without thinking, but he was ripped apart and instantly killed.
After
Batman
all that...
postulates that if the 0 point is the center of all reality, it was most likely flickering through millions of different realities every second, and as a result, jumping in would cause you to be scattered across millions of realities, like what had happened to Voyager. They realized that in order to make their way home, they needed to somehow calibrate the 0 point to their specific dimension to successfully escape. They were able to figure out how to use the I/O terminal to successfully calibrate the 0 point, and after years of being trapped on the island,
Oh, she
Raider
looks
was
so
finally
happy.
able to go home. After this, Batman called out Deathstroke for being the one who killed Fishstick, since the burns on Fishstick's body matched Deathstroke's attack. Deathstroke committed to working with the I/O to monitor this group of islanders, but he also agreed to let everyone go back home since they all needed to work as a team to return. Bandolette, Bonehead, and Magnus all returned to their homeworlds, but surprise, Deathstroke betrayed them again, revealing that he had a rift gun in his possession which he could use to get back home by himself.
Oh man.
He jumps into the 0 point, leaving the other two stranded since they needed 3 people to man the portal. Batman and Catwoman knew that they recognized another woman within the loop, so they returned to the surface of the island and found her, Harley Quinn. Surprisingly enough, she
Good luck
actually
working
wasn't
with that
looped,
one.
but just stayed and fought because she found it fun.
Yep.
Batman and Catwoman kidnap her and take her back to the 0
Psychopath.
point, where they successfully were able to open a portal to Gotham. Harley escapes, claiming that she would just rather stay on the island, and Batman and Catwoman return to Gotham, going their
It's honestly the perfect reality for her. Just go there, be psycho and kill people and get beat.
separate ways. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, within Lex Luthor's office, it is revealed that Dr. Sloan enlisted the help of him, Deathstroke, and the Batman Who Laughs. She wanted to plant an anchor device within the 0 point in order to use its power remotely.
She's
and
in
had
high
to
order, too.
contract with these people in order to do that job for her. In return, she would have to hold up her end of the deal, which she promises she will do.
Wonder what that is.
Back on the island, Raz's search for answers through John Jones' snapshots turned out mostly empty. He and the islanders he hired talked to most of them, but basically none of them had any information of use. After all, as snapshots, they don't retain much memory of their original person. However, there were 2 snapshots which did offer up useful information.
Bunker Jonesy.
Dark Jonesy and Jonesy the First.
Oh.
Dark Jonesy was a snapshot of Jones, who was left behind after Jones was sent to investigate the original cube which landed on the island. He knew about scrolls, which Io possessed, that spoke about spirit artifacts that, when charged, could give great power. Raz finds one of these scrolls and reads it to learn that one of these powerful artifacts was being guarded by the Spire Assassin. The scroll also said that in order to power up this artifact, it required the energy from human sacrifice. So close to completing his quest for understanding the Spire, he set out to find and kill the Spire Assassin. Meanwhile, an islander he hired would talk to Jonesy the First, who was a snapshot of Agent Jones created after
I don't remember what he said.
ever mission to the island.
Oh, he was at Pleasant.
After some persuasion, Jonesy the First tells the islander that the Spire will indeed grant immense power and knowledge, but it will also exploit one's every weakness and corrupt them. After telling Jonesy that Raz was out to learn the secrets of the Spire, he tells us to hurry and stop him before he becomes corrupted,
That was...
and that his
yeah,
power
okay.
would attract unwanted attention from someone. But we don't know yet.
The Cube
We go to the
Queen,
Spire and
who brought
find
us
the worst
Chapter
has
3.
happened. Raz had killed the Spire Assassin and taken her artifact, which was actually a shard of the cube. After powering the artifact with the lives of people he killed, Raz has become extremely powerful, but he had also been corrupted by the artifact,
And cooler.
turning him into the Glyph Master Raz. And Jonesy the First's warnings were correct. Raz activating the Spire artifact basically sent out a beacon across realities, and alerted none other than the last reality.
She's
The
coming.
Lost Reality began to send Chimera scouts to the island, prepping for a proper invasion this time around.
And we're coming into Chapter 2, Season 7, the best season in Fortnite history, in my opinion.
Instead of just sending a single cube like last time, the Chimera would discreetly scout the island.
It's a cool theme, too.
abducting islanders and leaving crop circles. A conspiracy theorist named Mari created a podcast called Hot Saucers to discuss the alien encounters and broadcasted it across the island. While initially skeptical of the hostility of the aliens, she starts to believe that the aliens are actually friendly and spreads this belief on her podcast. This results in a lot of the island adopting this pro-alien mindset, and many people actually began to welcome a potential invasion.
And that's the thing, too. It was an actual podcast. So, like, it's these little things that I keep forgetting. I don't remember if I knew it at the time or if I just forgot about it, but there's these little pieces of the story that you never hear about. It's a long video, yes, but man, is it interesting.
Of course, Dr. Sloan knows that any aliens showing up are probably a threat to the 0 points and orders Mari to stop her broadcast to stop spreading misinformation. Mari, of course, refuses.
More questions. Dr. Sloan from the I.O. has this to say. Cease all communications with and discussion of alien matters immediately. Uh-oh. Sounds like someone knows something. Well, tell me who you are and what the I.O. is, and maybe Hey, look, if you know who this Sloan weirdo is, can you message me? She will not back off, and she is really freaking me out. Seriously.
She's a psychopath.
Eventually, the last reality ordered the Chimera to begin the full-scale invasion, sending in a mothership and a lot of supporting ships that swarmed the island, while Islanders party to celebrate the arrival of the aliens. The mothership positions itself above the spire, still believing the 0 point to be within it. They destroy it with a giant laser, attempting to absorb the 0 point's energy, but they fail. However, the weapon the aliens used was so powerful it sent shockwaves across the island, including within the bridge, where the 0 point was actually contained. And
we thought it was
still
destroyed.
trapped within the 0 point was finally broken free. If you remembered, the most recent reality the 0 point was calibrated to was Gotham, when Batman and Catwoman escaped. Since the 0 point was calibrated to this reality, when the Foundation was broken free, he entered this reality and fell into the oceans off of Gotham.
It makes
However,
sense.
after months holding the 0 point together, he was unconscious. He was unconscious, and he sank to the bottom of the sea, clearly not waking up anytime soon. Back on the island, the Chimera had started an all-out war.
The
They had started a
UFOs.
campaign to take it over, and had already invaded and terraformed locations like Holly Hedges. They also had the foresight to take over the enemy from within, sending disguised aliens to infiltrate the IO and damage them from the inside. IO had decided to intervene and fight back directly. They set up bases across the island, and their main base of operations was in a facility underneath Corny
And that was a
Complex.
fun time at Frenzy,
After
too.
witnessing the destructive power of the Chimera firsthand, Sloan herself took command of the battlefield, leading troops in battle against the Chimera.
Remember we thought the
In a
0 point
victory
was up
for
there?
her, the IO had found John Jones himself on the island after months of him being missing. They imprisoned him within the bridge deep underground. However, Jones' defection also inspired others to defect. They would go against the IO from within their ranks. There was also one defector who seemingly leaked information to the Chimera. While defecting from the IO is understandable, I still don't understand why someone would help the aliens actively try to destroy your home.
True.
Maybe this person thought that the Chimera would win and help them, hoping that they could be spared.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
that's probably it
this person
too.
was just a massive troll. We'll never really know their motivation. IO was very harsh on eliminating this mole. They had found other defectors within their ranks and killed them, but the mole was still leaking information to the Chimera. Eventually, the mole's identity would be discovered. She was Maven. However, instead of killing her
The most
immediately,
random one,
Sloan
too.
decided to allow her to leak misinformation to the Chimera. She allowed Maven to tell them that IO's main base was under Corny Complex, and that destroying it would guarantee victory. While this was not entirely false, Sloan had a trick up her sleeve. During the war, the Chimera had been destroying entire locations by abducting them into the
Sucking them
mothership.
up.
This had happened to Coral Castle and Slurpy Swamp. However, Sloan intended to set a trap for the Chimera. By allowing Maven to tell the Chimera about where the IO's main base was, she could guarantee that they would attempt to abduct Corny Complex into the mothership. Of course, this was a trap, and she ordered bombs to be planted all over Corny Complex.
She is
Once the
smart.
aliens abducted the location, the bombs would be inside the mothership, and it would be blown apart from the inside. This was a pretty flawless plan, but there was one issue. Once the bombs were inside the mothership, there would be no way to detonate them from outside. A team would be required to enter the ship.
She doesn't
activate the
care
bomb's
about that,
timer,
though, does
and
she?
escape quickly before they detonated. This would be the most difficult part of the plan. The strike team was assembled, and the mission was all set to go forward. It was codenamed Operation
Skyfire.
The day came when the aliens.
Oh,
would
we thought
finally
that was
abduct Corny
tilted in there.
Complex into
Remember
the
that?
mothership. The strike team nervously waited, knowing that this was a dangerous mission, but they had Dr. Sloan at their back, who promised them that she would be able to hack into the mothership's door
I always wanted to go out there. Every single time I was in there, I wanted to go out there, and it was so cool that we finally actually got to be able to do that.
system to support them. What could go wrong? Their team was abducted into the mothership. Operation Skyfire was a go. Sloan would open the doors of the abduction cells they were held in, allowing them to escape and head towards
Beautiful
a place where
event,
they
too.
could activate the bombs and leave. However, they were spotted by a Chimera saucer, who then set off an alarm. Chimera squads were sent to stop the team, but Sloan would be able to close off their access and find a safe path through the ship. Using a transport chute, the team found themselves in a room next to the abducted location. The process to arm the bombs began, but the signal was quickly disrupted. Turning around to see what caused it, we are horrified to find a cube forming in the middle of the room.
Horrified?
Realizing that the Chimera had failed to stop the strike team, the last reality decided to send one of their own to finish us off. Sloan was horrified to see this.
Sloan
She said
was
that the
horrified.
last time
Okay.
the cube was on the island, it nearly destroyed it.
Because we were like,
We thought the cube had
yes.
been destroyed, but here it was again.
It's Kevin! That was so cool to see. This is also one of the best events ever.
Last time it nearly destroyed the island.
The cube started sending out bolts of lightning, killing a significant chunk of the strike team, but Sloan, through some quick thinking, was able to force the devices the strike team wore to release a synchronized burst of energy, which killed the cube.
Why didn't you do that the first time?
After taking care of this obstacle, there were enough of the strike team left to arm the bombs, which they did. Unlucky for the strike team, however, after they armed the bombs, Sloan dropped a bombshell on them. She said that she wouldn't be bringing them home, leaving them to die. She said that it was necessary because she didn't want any chance of the cube coming back to the island, as the consequences of such a thing happening would be dire. She tells the team that their sacrifice would be honored before breaking communication with them. With nothing else they could do in the less than 2 minutes before the bombs detonated, what was left of the strike team went over to the dead cube. I don't really know what happened next.
Yeah,
Maybe
see,
there was an
it's...
empathy from the team members to the cube.
I don't know.
All of them shared the tragic fate of being killed by Sloan.
Maybe.
It was the power of friendship. But somehow, the team members were able to reboot the dead cube. But it was different.
Was it dead
time.
though? Maybe
It
not.
had turned blue. It had become a purified cube. The room we were in started.
I'm sure that's something we'll figure out in the future, right? How like the whole cube thing works, and then we'll look back at this event and be like, oh yeah, that's it.
To elevate, taking us to an absolutely massive chamber on the upper level of the mothership. Seriously, this chamber was probably as big as the entire island. The chamber was initially pitch black, only lit up by the glow of patrolling abductors, but the team watched in horror as another cube, a corrupted cube, rose up in front of them, and another one, and another one.
Such a cool event.
Glow with the purple light of thousands of cubes, with keen eyes being able to spot a golden cube far in the distance. This was the true last reality, the Cube Legion.
And we had no idea.
Was the Cube Queen, and they had fooled the IO, not the other way around. Dr. Sloan had made a grave mistake. She had assumed that there was only one cube, and that the bombs would destroy it. But now that there were thousands of them, when the mothership blew up, there would certainly be surviving cubes which fell onto the island. The countdown hit 0, and explosions rocked the mothership. We see that the abductors and a significant chunk of the cubes were destroyed, but as the strike team fell from the sky, they watched as many cubes rain down onto the island, including the blue one. As they looked up at the debris and cubes falling, they realized that the mission was ultimately a failure. While they had succeeded in destroying the mothership, they had fallen for the last reality's trap. The last reality had sacrificed the Chimera Legion so that the cubes would be able to fall into the island after the explosion.
There's the blue one.
The Chimera were defeated, but now we would have to deal with their masters.
That was such a cool event. We thought there were going to be map changes, but man, I was happy with it. I thought it did make it seem like it though, didn't it?
Let's go back to the Foundation. After months unconscious under the water, the Foundation finally woke up.
That was a
Swam
big
out of the
surprise
water
too.
And started walking towards Gotham City. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, the Justice League were fighting several villains after a rift had appeared there. Remember Dr. Sloan's agreement with Lex Luthor? Well, apparently her side of the agreement would be to allow him to enter Reality Zero to study the 0 Point. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
While the Justice League are fighting the villains in Metropolis, Batman decides to go back to Gotham to see if there was anything going on there. He meets the Foundation, and after a short fight, they realize that both of them are enemies with the IO, and they strike a truce. When Batman tells him about the rift that had opened, the Foundation says that it's actually possible to close it. He gives Batman a device, similar to IO's rift gun, and explains that if two people on both sides of the rift activated at the same time, the rift would be closed. The two joined the fight back in Metropolis, with the Foundation hoping that he could use the rift to get back to Reality Zero. Lex Luthor appears in an airtight suit he had spent time developing. It was similar to the Foundation suit, so he could enter the island without being affected by the loop.
And he's coming to the island, right?
However,
Trust
the
me.
Foundation cracks his visor, forcing him to retreat, since he would be looped if he entered the rift now. The Foundation is then tackled by the Batman Who Laughs into the rift. Before he enters, the Foundation tells Batman to wait for a signal to activate the device. Now in Reality Zero, the Batman Who Laughs and Foundation fight. Batman Who Laughs uses his metal visor to crack Foundation's helmet. Even though the suit has an auto repair feature, the time it would take so would be too long, as the Foundation would be overtaken by the loop. But at the last second, the Foundation defeated the Batman Who Laughs and told Batman to close the rift. Now with the rift closed, and with Foundation being the only one left alive at the middle of the storm, he doesn't have to worry about being looped anymore.
There we
go. The
go.
Batman Who Laughs was taken care of, now trapped in the loop. However, he had come back to an island in chaos.
Just like Harley Quinn, doesn't care.
To end the last reality. but in reality, she gave them the perfect opportunity to attack. The aftermath of Operation Skyfire left the island covered in the last reality's cubes. The cubes would corrupt the area around them, just like the original cube did with its runes. And this corrupted land would create areas known as sideways bubbles. Let me explain. The last reality is an invading force of darkness which originates in a single reality. They consist of their leader, the Cube Queen, and her army, which includes these cubes, fiends, brutes, and caretakers. However, other than the cubes, the last reality cannot survive in environments other than the one they come from.
It was weird to see
While
that the
lesser
cube
fiends can
fiends.
survive in the cube's corrupted environment, the elite army the Cube Queen employs cannot survive in any different condition.
Yeah, it's weird that there's like different, like the fiends could survive out there, but the ones from the queen can only stay in the sideways. It's a little weird in that sense.
As a result, in order to move her army to a different reality, she would need to send the cubes first to create areas known as the sideways. These would be bubbles of safety for the elite fiends and caretakers. In order to completely invade the world, the last reality would have to engulf the entire island in these sideways bubbles. So the first stages of the takeover was happening in Reality Zero. Reality Zero was a target of the last reality because it contained the 0 point, the nexus of all realities. If they were able to control the 0 point, the last reality would be able to fulfill their goal of complete annihilation much easier. This was the most important reality they've invaded so far. The war between Reality Zero and the last reality. The reality which created everything and the reality which will destroy
Cool to
everything,
see her step
has
out too.
begun. A war effort was funded on the island to fight back against the slowly corrupting last reality. While the islanders fight against the elite fiends, the Cube Queen, in her golden cube form, starts to travel across the island. She visited each of the other cubes which had landed on the island and activated them. The cubes began self-multiplying, creating smaller copies of themselves. Meanwhile, the blue cube the strike team rebooted lay dormant near the edge of the island. The golden cube travels to the center of the island and hovers over the 0 point, building up its energy. The other cubes join her at the center and eventually form the Convergence, a giant pyramid.
What a fun
The Cube
place.
Queen finally reveals her true form, enclosing herself within a bubble above the pyramid, building her power further. She intended to make a giant rift to the last reality and engulf the entire island in the sideways, winning them the invasion. The Cube Queen summons the powerful caretakers to help in the invasion, and the islanders fight back even harder. While all this is happening,
I was hoping something better was underneath that bunker, right? Because it looked like there was going to be updates to it too. Oh man.
Io was planning a counterattack. Dr. Sloan studied alien technology at the IO's base in the formerly redacted bunker.
And you knew like the end was coming too. You knew Chapter 3 was on its way because finally the bunker was open.
The IO built a fortress near the Convergence, naming it the Guava Fort. It wasn't impressive at all, a ragtag effort. As the Cube Queen's corruption continued spreading over the island, things didn't look good for the islanders, but they could do nothing but fight on.
Yep.
The Cube Queen finally reached her full power, and using the Convergence almost
this
like
is
a
the
giant
end.
rift beacon, opens a portal to the last reality. We see many ships the size of the mothership destroyed previously, and a massive ship known as the Cube's Cradle, the true mothership of the
And you
last
already know
reality.
that's coming back
The
too.
real invasion has just begun.
I don't think we've seen the real invasion. I disagree with that. I think it's yet to come.
But the Islanders were not alone. The Purified Cube teleported itself to Guava Fort, helping us fight against the last reality. The Purified Cube provided a shield around the fort to protect from projectile attacks, and also heal the fighters. The invasion begins, and a large number of saucers come to attack. Luckily, the Purified Cube's shield holds up, and the Islanders fight back against the invading force, but it seems like any damage done is negligible. The Cube Queen amps up the attack, summoning multiple caretakers to attack the fort, a force which would be almost impossible to fight back against. And when the saucers abduct the weapons of the fighters, the battle becomes a massacre. The Purified Cube's shield failed, and Islanders are slaughtered both by the Chimera ships and the caretakers.
It's
And when
weird
an
seeing them
abductor
actually die
destroys
now
the
too,
rebooted
eh?
Cube, all hope is seemingly lost.
Such a cool event too. They keep getting better and better at this, don't they? Goodbye, Kevin.
Meanwhile, underneath the island,
Or
the
Blevin.
IO are being instructed to evacuate. However, Dr. Sloan still has old grudges to settle. She goes to John Jones's prison and tells him that she would execute him right then and there. She instructs her guard to commence the execution, but before the process is completed, the door is broken down by none
was
other
so
than the
hype.
Foundation. He kills the IO guards and frees Jones. Surprised that the Foundation would come back to save him, the Foundation reminds Jones that he promised him Geno. The Foundation and the Seven have a plan to save the island from the last reality. The Foundation fights its way to the 0-point chamber, and he and Jones fight off waves of IO guards. The Foundation disables the gyro system and tells Jones to press a button, putting in motion his plan. The island lurches as it begins to tilt. The Foundation tells the Visitor and Scientist to start the second phase of the plan. Above ground, the Scientist and Visitor are searching for survivors.
It was so cool to see them come back,
the
too.
People left alive at the Guava Fort, still under attack, and rescue them. The Visitor fights off several caretakers by himself, while the Scientist breaks into a bunker and tells the Islanders to follow in.
That's all we need today to get in.
He'll see him on the other side, and the Visitor flies away as the Scientist leads the Islanders into the bridge. He tells them to follow him as the island continues to tilt further and further. They meet up with the Foundation and Jones at the 0-point chamber in the center of the island, and finish off the last IO guards. The Seven assure us that since this is the epicenter of the island, we should be safe as it flips over.
I didn't even notice the 0 point
there.
there.
To be able to hold under the pressure of the water, until suddenly a caretaker appears and starts to crack the glass. Now, why can a caretaker swim this far underwater when cube monsters are weak to water? It's not explained, and I
never thought of
think
that.
This fact was just overlooked by Epic when making this event.
That would make sense.
But the caretaker breaks the glass, and we are sucked far away from the island. We surface and watch as the island flips over. As the Cube Queen is submerged under the water, she's seemingly
See
killed
you
as
later.
the portal to the last reality is closed. All the invading forces are destroyed as the island literally falls on top of them.
A lot of people thought that was chapter 1. I thought we were looking at Paradise at some point. And the funny thing is, even just watching in this event, I didn't notice that the Cube Queen like screamed here and went away. Apparently she survived though. I don't know if we're going to touch on that, but apparently she survived. She rifted. Oh yeah, it does look like she rifted actually, doesn't it? Beautiful event. Beautiful.
And the rotation is completed, revealing a brand new island, a brand new world full of possibilities. It required lots of sacrifice, but the last reality was now defeated, and life would go on in this new land.
See, I thought that was Paradise.
And while life on the new island was mostly peaceful, Io still controlled the 0 point, and as long as this was the case, the people of the island would never find peace. And behind the scenes, another major conflict was brewing. For the first time in years, the Paradigm contacted the Seven, informing them that she would return.
Running
However,
into
she'd be
present day
received by
here.
the other members. And deep underground, Dr. Sloan and the IO survived, and they built giant drills to make their way up to the surface. And when they make their way up there, the Seven would have yet another battle on their hands.
Yep.
Many years of struggle have passed, but it looks like many more are still in store for the people of Reality Zero.
Is that it?
And as of right now, that should be the entirety of the Fortnite lore.
I was trying to figure out
Thank you
how's
for
the
watching,
channels.
And if you made it all the way through, I really appreciate your support.
Well, thank
If you
you.
would like to support me further, please consider using my supporter creator code.
Yes,
Rivecha
guys,
in the Fortnite
please,
item shop.
please
Feel
use
free
it.
to correct anything I got wrong or continue the discussion down below in the comments. And as always, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.
That was a fantastic video. That was fantastic. That is the best video you will ever see on it. So what we don't know too much since that's happened. We've seen the Paradigm and the Scientists. We've seen that they're trying to retrieve something of the rocket. The IO is on the island. The next season seems like things are going to really pick up. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please, I encourage you to go check out the original, show them some love, subscribe to the channel, and please use the code. I will have it all pinned in the comment. And thank you so much for letting me react to this video. This was the best video I've ever seen, and it's not even close. Like on the Fortnite lore topic, it was fantastic, guys. Please, I have to plug in because it's the supporter creator rules. I have to plug in my own code. If you'd like to use my code in the item shop, it is Clen just Clen #Adam #Epic Partner. But don't use my code. Use the code that's in the pinned comment, please. I would appreciate it, and thank you so much for watching, guys. Like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. If you like to... Oh, by the way, check out the description for my other channels and Real Ember on Fiverr, who will create thumbnails for you. Take care of all your thumbnail needs, guys. Thank you so much again. I will see you in the next one. Take care.